The first section of our book is an overview of public speaking, and it just gives some general concepts about how to be a successful speaker. The first place it starts off is talking about the audience and how the speaker should be audience-centered. So focusing the core of your speech on the audience and really trying to figure out what demographic is going to be listening to your speech is essential to being a successful public speaker. Like we always say in class, if you were giving a speech to someone or a group of people in the South, you would use very different vernacular than you would if you were giving a speech to the North. If I was presenting to a class full of kindergartners, I would use very different style than I would if I was giving it to a class of college students. And the big thing here is you just want to be able to connect with your audience, because the more you can connect with the audience, the more they're going to feel part of it, and the more they're going to be attentive to your speech. And then going along with this, the topic has to tie in with the audience, which makes sense, because if the topic's uninteresting to the audience, they're not really going to care about what you're presenting. The third thing, and this is like a big thing for me, is be knowledgeable. I've always said when my friends are asking for help on their speeches, or if they want to go over the presentations for me in class like we always do together, I always say you shouldn't have it memorized. If you really know about something, for instance, if you play a sport and you're teaching someone how to do something in the sport, you don't have a memorized prepared speech, you just know it, so it seems very knowledgeable. So if you come into a speech and you're reading off a note card, or you're reading off a script, or even if you just have it memorized in your head but you're speaking like you have it memorized, it almost makes it seem like you don't have the knowledge that you're trying to claim you do. Whereas if you just go up and you're very loose and calm with yourself and you're very knowledgeable about the subject and you speak with that kind of mentality, it's going to come across a lot more legitimate to the audience. Then it goes in to talk about logos and egos and pathos and all that, and how you got to appeal to the reliability, logic, and emotions of the audience, which all makes sense. And then it talks about how confidence is key. Being confident, I think, just keeps your mind so clear that it makes it 10 times easier to give a speech. When you're confident and you're not worrying about anything, all you have to worry about is what you're speaking on. When you're not confident and you're really scared, you start thinking about all these things. What if I mess up? What if I do this? What if I do that? And that kind of clogs your mind, and you're not able to give all your attention to the presentation you're trying to give. Then it talks about finding techniques that complement your style, and then practicing those techniques a lot. So not everyone has the same technique. Not every movement of your hand or change of tone of voice is going to be perfect for every presenter or public speaker. I like watching Ben Shapiro a lot. He speaks really fast and he's really knowledgeable about his topics that he talks about. I'm not able to do that. So if I were to go up and I would try to speak really fast, it wouldn't go well for me. So you got to find the techniques that work well for you, and the only way to really do that, I guess, is just practicing. And practicing is awesome, because the more you practice, the more confident you'll become, and then the more confident you become, the less you'll need to practice, because you'll be so charismatic up on the podium or on the stage, wherever you're giving your speech, that you really just feel comfortable doing it. And then it talks about how to actually formulate a presentation or formulate a speech. The first step is starting, and this is just understanding your topic and your audience. So what am I going to be talking about? Who am I going to be talking about it to? How can I link these together perfectly? How can I clearly get my message across to the audience? Then researching. Your own personal knowledge is a great place to start when you're researching. I always kind of hated research papers, because a lot of times if I'm interested in the topic, I already know a lot about the topic, but the teacher still asks for 6 or 7 sources, and I end up finding 2 or 3 really good ones, and then I just have to find 4 or 5 more just to get that requirement filled so I get a good grade. So personal knowledge is a great place to start, and then after you have your personal knowledge all laid out and you need more, then you should do research, but make sure you're citing correctly and doing what the professor asks you, otherwise you could be in danger of plagiarism. Then creating comes, and creating is just outlining and, like I said, creating the overall structure of your speech. So how are you going to introduce yourself? How are you going to introduce your topic? What's the body of your topic? How are you getting this message across? And then how are you going to close it? How are you going to bring it all together back at the end? And then presenting, really all there is to presenting is just kill it. You've practiced this, you understand what you're talking about. Just get up, give that speech like the confident person you are, because you've practiced a lot, and you'll be great. And then at the end, once you're done giving your presentation, you want to go back and look at it. Professor Prentice has us do this, and this is just a really good tip, or a really good idea to try, because sometimes you might not notice you're doing things, or maybe when you're giving a speech, you understand the idea you're trying to get across, so it makes sense in your head, but then when you go back and listen to it, you realize the idea was never really relayed. So that's essentially just an overview of Chapter 1 of our public speaking textbook.